Mario vs. Donkey Kong is a classic 2D puzzle platformer released on the Nintendo Game Boy Advance in 2004. 20 years later, Mario vs. Donkey Kong has now been remade for the Nintendo Switch. With a $50 price point, should you pick up Mario vs. Donkey Kong on the Nintendo Switch? Let's find out. As soon as you start up the game, you're greeted with an absolute jump scare. Cutscenes in a Nintendo game? You see, back on the original 2004 Mario vs. Donkey Kong, they only had what was basically just a photo slideshow for the cutscenes. I imagine it was probably due to the limited hardware of the Game Boy Advance, but now we have full-on animated cutscenes for the Switch version. This isn't the first time they've added cutscenes to old games that didn't have them before. They also did this for Super Mario RPG on the Switch, released in 2023. And every time they've done this now, I think it's such a welcomed addition. These cutscenes are absolutely beautiful. It really shows just how far Nintendo has come, and it's really cool to see these high-quality cutscenes in a Mario game. Actually, speaking of the graphics, that's one of the major changes in this version of the game. The entire game has basically been updated to the modern Mario characters that we're all familiar with. Mario from Super Mario 3D World, and Donkey Kong from Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. Call me biased, but I do think there was a bit of charm to the old janky graphics of the original game for multiple reasons. One being the fact that Mario vs. Donkey Kong is based on the original Donkey Kong arcade game, so it is a little different to see very polished graphics in this like classic arcade style game. Also, nearly all of the Mario vs. Donkey Kong games following the original one were only on Nintendo's handhelds like the Game Boy Advance, the Nintendo DS, and the 3DS. So it is a little jarring going from these old looking graphics to the new one. But hey, I totally acknowledge how dumb it is to complain about better graphics. I just think it's kind of a weird mismatch to have these really great looking graphics combined with the very simplistic gameplay. And speaking of the gameplay, how about let's actually talk about what happens in this game. By the way, make sure you guys subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of my videos talking about Nintendo games just like this one. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, Mario vs. Donkey Kong is heavily based on the original Donkey Kong arcade game. In the Donkey Kong arcade game, you played as Mario, previously known as Jumpman, and tried to navigate these levels to reach Donkey Kong at the top. So when we put these two games side by side, they look quite similar. In Mario vs. Donkey Kong, you are once again trying to navigate levels to reach Donkey Kong. Basically, you just go through level after level and world after world. Each world has their own sort of theme to it, and each level has their own sort of mechanics and puzzles to be solved. I did find it very interesting just how simple the gameplay can be in Mario vs. Donkey Kong, especially when you're just starting out. A lot of the levels just kind of feel like, okay, get Mario from here to here, which does make me feel like this game is sort of for a very certain type of audience. You just get a bunch of these 2D puzzle levels, and that's pretty much it for the entire game. So if you're expecting like an epic adventure where you play as Mario fighting Donkey Kong, I wouldn't really say that's the type of gameplay that you'll find in this game. Now, despite its very simplistic gameplay, I will say that I did find myself often craving coming back to this game. There is something very satisfying about solving a puzzle or doing some specific maneuver to get a certain collectible or reach the end of the stage. Hell, we can even talk about the boss battles, which basically feel like a test of all of the knowledge that you've learned thus far in the game. You actually fight against Donkey Kong with different platforms that you have to jump over or different objects that you have to throw at Donkey Kong. It does make for some interesting gameplay, and at least for me, it felt like it was sort of scratching a certain part of my brain. Now, another thing that is very unique to the gameplay of Mario vs. Donkey Kong is the actual controls. I was actually quite surprised to see just how different it felt to play this game compared to like any other Mario game. Although this game is focused on 2D levels and might look a little bit similar to something like New Super Mario Bros. Or even the recent Super Mario Bros. Wonder, the actual controls feel very different compared to those games. This is a very slower type of Mario game, which does make sense because you are doing a lot of puzzle platforming. At times, Mario can feel quite slower than you would expect, and also much heavier than you would expect. And as your resident 2D Mario enjoyer, it did take me some time to sort of adjust to the controls of Mario vs. Donkey Kong. This game also features some really fun maneuvers that you can do as Mario. You have little tricks like the backflip or the handstand, even the handstand into a double jump. And I will say, as I continue playing the game, it was very satisfying to really get a hold of all of these little tricks in the controls. There were even some levels that basically required you to have to do either a backflip or a handstand jump. So I can see that possibly being a problem for people who aren't super familiar with these types of tricks in Mario games, but I did find it very fun to master the controls and really use all of these tricks and maneuvers to my advantage. So that pretty much covers everything in the base game of Mario vs. Donkey Kong. Now, how about let's talk about some of the differences that you'll find in the Switch version compared to the original. First off, the Switch version of Mario vs. Donkey Kong introduces two-player co-op for the first time. One player plays as Mario and another player plays as Toad. I think this is a really cute game to have co-op for. Like, I'm just imagining, you know, all of the partners who will play this together, or all of the siblings who can play this together. Hell, maybe this is even a nice introduction for kids to get their parents playing. So the two-player co-op definitely feels like a nice addition to the Switch version. There is also a new casual mode that you can play in. This makes the game a little bit easier for people who need that extra help, and I will say that there are some points in this game where it can feel a little bit tough and unforgiving. For example, Mario can only take one hit in this game before you lose a life and have to restart the level. However, in casual mode, you get some extra chances as well as unlimited time for each level. So basically, if you want to play the game as it was originally intended, you have the classic mode. However, if you're having some difficulty and want a little bit of extra help, there's always the casual mode for you. Now, another thing exclusive to the Switch version is the price of the game. Mario vs. Donkey Kong on the Nintendo Switch will run you $50 US, which I think has sparked quite some controversy. In this game, you'll find a total of 130 different levels. The main sort of story mode consists of 8 worlds, which is actually 2 worlds more than the original. They actually added 2 bonus worlds exclusively in the Switch version of Mario vs. Donkey Kong. Once you beat the main story and roll the credits, there is even more gameplay afterwards. You have the New Game Plus, which basically doubles the amount of worlds in the game. This time you have to guide Mini Mario along with you through the level, which I'm not gonna lie is not my favorite thing ever. I was never a really big fan of the whole Lemmings type of gameplay in the Mario vs. Donkey Kong games, but there is an entire World 1 Plus through World 8 Plus if you want to take on that challenge. You also get some expert levels which you have to unlock by getting gold stars throughout the game, and every single level in the game also has a time trial type of mode where it'll give you a certain best time and you have to beat the level before the time runs out. So what I will say is that there is more than meets the eye for this game. When you think about how there's all new cutscenes, there's all new graphics, 2 brand new worlds, which essentially means 4 worlds with the New Game Plus, along with the new 2-player co-op. At the very least, I think Mario vs. Donkey Kong offers a competent enough game, but is it enough to be worth $50? I'm not gonna lie, I kinda lean a little bit towards no. I would say this is another instance where it's a perfect game to pick up if you find it on sale, but as far as paying the full $50 price for this game, you'll most likely get at least some fun and enjoyment out of Mario vs. Donkey Kong. It's definitely a pleasant experience. I just feel like it's a little tough to justify the $50 for it. It has been interesting to see which remakes Nintendo just does sort of the bare minimum for, such as Mario vs. Donkey Kong, compared to the more extravagant remakes like Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. And if you want to hear why I think Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury is one of Nintendo's best remakes, check out my review of the game below. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of Mario vs. Donkey Kong. For now, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to all of our members. My name is Chase and I will see you guys again soon. Bye.